this is the invitation. This is the Silver Spook stream about the invitation, vampiric disenchantment, disinviting yourself from parasitical entities and declining to date vampires, and also, of course, defanging patriarchy. So, anyways, the invitation is a movie that is out in. I forgot where you can watch it, but you can watch it, I think, on streaming services. And it is a show that is very much it's a Dracula update. It's a classic vampire movie update in good ways. It doesn't have the best critic review score, but I mean, who cares about Rotten Tomatoes? Those people are a bunch of putrid fruits anyway. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not. That's not an anti-queer thing. I'm just saying they're just, that's a bunch of hoity-toity, highfalutin film critics that are pissed off that they wasted $200,000 on an NYU degree in cinema or English. So, anyways, the invitation is a very it's a story that kind of it's what is it? It's a part horror movie. It's not the most terrifying one. So if you're going for big scares, jump scares, getting creeped out and having the all of the tiny little hairs stand up on the back of your neck, it's not necessarily the scariest film. It's not scary, but it's more a show that deals with a lot of things, but not certainly like the main character, who is a black woman. That's actually very important in this context. She is somebody who is definitely strongly working class. She's in the beginning of the show. Her name is Ellie. She is Ellie. Everyone's named Ellie now. The Last of Us, Mushroom Fungus, Zombie Dodgers, Ellie. Black female protagonists of an actually good vampire movie is also named Ellie. What's up with this? I don't know. Everyone's Ellie today. Everybody just wants to be Ellen Ripley. I'm gonna chalk it up to that. Another very important empowered female protagonist. But anyways, so Ellie, the main character, who is the invitation, kind of, she's the one who's kind of being invited, right? Before she gets invited in, I'm trying to find a picture of just that. Evie, not Ellie. Evie. Oh my god, I already got this wrong. The invitation is Evelyn Evie Jackson, played by Emmanuel. She was the actress was in Game of Thrones, is where I most know her from, but she's also in Fast and Furious 9. Yeah, that's who that is. And so her character is, she's being invited, right, to, stay for a brief period with her long lost family members from across the pond, right? And that's kind of the beginning of it. And there's a lot of, in the very beginning, there's an ominous scene where a woman basically kills herself because, and it's unclear what's going on. But she's in some kind of, old European mansion. It's not clear when exactly it is, right? It's one of these. It's very Crimson Peak vibes. It's very it's like some people said it's Crimson Peak cross with Dracula. It's not clear when it is, but a woman killed herself and she says it'll end with me. And then it cuts to sometime in the present in New York City. And you have Evie is there, and she is working right in a New York. She's working in a New York City restaurant, carrying around a tray of beef carpaccio, if I'm not mistaken. And lots of wealthy, people are having their beautiful, gala ball or their fancy dinner, whatever they're having. And she's just a wait staff at some fancy New York rich people's event. asking people if they want to beef Carpaccio, and people are just kind of giving her snide looks and just ignoring her and maltreating her because she's a service industry worker under a capitalist, racist, colonialist United States, etc. And so she's kind of just not having a good time, right? And then she at the let me see if I can get a picture of that. The invitation, she takes a break with her friend. See the two characters in the beginning. So it's Evie and Lucy. Wait, I'm trying to find where is it in the very beginning. I'm probably not gonna be able to find it. But it's this is one of her in the very beginning of the show. But it's her and her friend, right? And they're like, talking, commiserating with each other about how this is such a terrible situation we're in. I got groped like 3 or 5 times by creepy rich white dudes while I was serving people their hors d'oeuvres, and we're all being treated crappily. We're being paid crappily. I can't afford rent. They're just like they're struggling working class women in a city in it could really be anywhere, but it's certainly like New York City, but it could be like anywhere in the Western capitalist world basically. And so her situation is not good. Her friend is like, "Oh yeah, girl, I'm going on another date tonight. Eventually, I'm gonna marry me. Some well-to-do guy, and I'm gonna be set." Or they're kind of talking. I take that back. They're both kind of joking about we're gonna they're going on dates, right? They're looking for guys because they're young, they're young single black women in New York City, and they're talking about, they're all like, I don't really want to keep doing this too much longer because I don't know how this is working out as just working these terribly oppressive jobs that don't pay enough to take care of my material needs, like my rent and my food and stuff. And so and I keep on getting sexually harassed by all these wealthy creepy dudes. And then the manager of the restaurant staff, right, when they overhears them talking about getting groped and getting harassed and the bad pay and the bad treatment, right? And also there's race, there's gender stuff going on there at the same time, because they're like, you're not supposed to be here because you're just a black help, you're the non-white help, right? And so we already are ignoring you, but also sexually harassing you at the same time because you're also women. It's very much like a Thomas Jefferson, sort of vibe, which is to say, because Thomas Jefferson had a 14-year-old black sex slave woman, a girl in his house that only had one exit. He was Thomas Jefferson, Jefferson. I'm already going full Silver Spook. It's too late. It's too late for me. I've already bit the entire. I've bit into the vessel, and I'm draining it for all it's worth already. I'm already deep into ripping a new one off the colonizers. But I just want to point something out though, because I just looking at that picture, it did strike me as something very important to point out, which is that I have incredibly long threads, and I don't mean my clothes. I'm talking about my Twitter threads. Thomas Jefferson, right, owned 600 plus slaves. Happy President's Day, or unhappy U.S. President's Day. He also had a 14-year-old concubine, sex slave, black girl, and also plagiarized the U.S. Constitution from indigenous people that he genocided. So happy President's Day. But also men, he also said things like men have rights to life, liberty, and property, right? So-called great ideas that he stole from native people. And didn't really follow. Nobody had rights to life and liberty in total in the United States, only for a select few. But the property that was the last one included, of course, blacks. Jefferson also said blacks are inferior to whites in the endowment of body and mind, and women should not wrinkle their foreheads with politics. That was one of his. That's a direct Jefferson quote. Basically, like it was number one, women are property. And number two, they shouldn't even bother because the purpose of women is to be beautiful for me. and especially 14-year-old black girls that I keep as sex slaves. That's the president of the United States. So I just want to point out that Jefferson was a very vampiric character. He was he was a Euro feudal aristocratic, wealthy, human owner, right? He owned other people, slaver, and a parasitic entity. He was a very parasitic entity. His Monticello and his great wealth and his great political power that extended from his economic power that he stole was parasitically sucked from the 600 plus black slaves that he owned, and he also was parasitically preying upon the black 14-year-old child that he was literally owning and kept locked in a room that was damp all the time, had almost no light. It was like being locked in a cellar, speaking of vampires and coffins, right? And she was kept basically as a prisoner and the only exit from her room was into Thomas Jefferson's bedroom, where he would regularly take her and sexually abuse her. So Thomas Jefferson was parasitically preying on the body of a 14-year-old black woman. So it's actually very appropriate in that sense. And this is the founder of the United States, so I just want to point that out. The invitation, Happy Black History Month. And so when the girl is being preyed upon by these creeps, right? These wealthy dudes, her butt's getting grabbed, her chest is getting fondled, and the two girls exchange with each other, like they're like looking at each other like, how many times did you get groped? Oh, like 4. And then she's like, oh yeah, you have me beat. I only got groped 3 times, but not if you count like these other parts of my body that was also touching my hair, because my black hair is just getting touched all the time. That happens in this movie as well. A Euro feudalist woman actually like grabs the black girl's hair, and it's all like, what are you doing that for? Anyway, so oh, sorry, my stream seems to have frozen here. But anyways, so so her and her friend are commiserating over this like maltreatment in this very expensive, fancy establishment. They are thinking, how can we get, part of it is kind of like joking, like, I'm going to marry some rich white boy and I'm going to be set. But then it's also kind of like, what would that entail though? It's kind of like, and at one point the friend is kind of going, the main character, right, gets a message. Oh, I'm being invited to, meet with this long lost relative of mine, a cousin from London, right? And he's some fancy, posh white British real estate agent type, wealthy family, etc. Long lost cousin, and he's definitely a white guy. So he's not, he's related, but she's half black, or white and black mix. But the family that she's gonna meet are gonna be the wealthy OG colonizers, and I think actually her friend, right, says like, she's like, oh, it'll be fine. They're very polite and they're very civil and they're very nice, and they're British. They're well mannered. I'm sure they won't be mean to me. And the friend is like, the British are only polite because of all that colonial guilt. You know that, right? And so that already comes up in the very first 5 minutes of the show. And the friends are like, oh, I wouldn't be mean to that guy. This sounds like a bunch of creeps. You don't want to go to London to some weird old creepy Dracula castle, and get you're gonna get chained up in their torture dungeon or something. Like, she's like, their friend is kind of like half joking about that stuff, like saying you shouldn't accept the invitation to visit your rich British white posh relatives. You shouldn't, right? But then the main character Evie responds, well, you the last 3 white boys, the last 3 men you dated were all white boys, and so so it's kind of there's some of that back and forth happening, and then but ultimately, she decides, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna go and meet up with this family of mine. Part of the story is that Evie's character. Let me get the synopsis real fast. So Evie's character in The Invitation, um, Evie's character is, she doesn't have a lot of family, right? She doesn't have a lot of people close to her. She basically has that one friend, right? A young woman is escorted and swept off her feet, only to realize a gothic conspiracy is afoot. I'm not saying that it's not that The Cure and Depeche Mode are plotting her demise. Okay, that's not the kind of goth we're talking about. Everybody's listening to Depeche Mode now because The Last of Us uses the song in 2 credits outros this season. The Invitation, yeah. So I'm just trying to get the plot. So Evie's character is struggling freelancing for a catering business, and she's also trying to get her MFA, her Master's in Fine Arts in sculpting. And there's a scene of her like doing clay pottery, and she's trying to make something of her life. She's trying to like move up out of just the service industry, right? And getting groped and fondled as the eye candy / life support system for food moving. That is what service industry workers are. Harkening back to The Menu, I just did a stream about The Menu recently. That's all about the service industry, and the culinary so-called arts that are more like the culinary colony, culinary colonization. But anyway, Evie takes a DNA test, discovers she has a distant cousin in England named so it's like the Ancestry.com thing happens. So the point of The Invitation is never do a online DNA test. Because you're literally giving, that's not the point of the invitation, but you are giving your DNA and all of your bodily in your genome and all your health records over to some parasitic data entity that will use it for its nefarious, diabolical purposes. And so Evie's character takes DNA test though, discovers she has a distant cousin in England named Oliver Alexander. She meets Oliver, tells her the scandal of her great-grandmother Emmeline, who had a secret child with a black footman. So this is actually interesting because already there, right? I talk a lot about, recently I did a stream about the feudal, colonial, and capitalist overlays, integral and emblematic in the game Neofeud that I produced, right? I did a video about Pretty in Pink about that, right? Style and neo-feudalism, and so and how corporate families replaced royal families, but it's basically the same thing, right? That's one of the lines. And so already in the beginning, when Evie in The Invitation meets with her cousin Oliver, right, it comes to light that there was a black footman, and it's the black person was the servant, obviously, and that's part of the movie. It comes up several times, which is that the servant class are all disproportionately, I think, as I understand, in the actual when they go to England, right, the Anglo-Saxon great colonizer in chief, England's the family estate is exclusively staffed, all of its staff, right, outside of the butler or the manager of all of the servants, but all the servants are not white, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's Asian and there's black and brown mix, there's Indian, but every single one is, and that's actually kind of, it does, so that the race aspect does play into that. And it's also, so you have race, you have the feudalism because it's a feudal manner, in the areas where they used to have the serfs and the areas of the Windsor kings and queens and lords and ladies and the vassals, etc. So you have the feudalism, you have the racism, you have the colonialism because these people were all like coming to England due to British colonization of Africa, India, Asia, etc. It's just watching RRR, the one of the most popular movies in the entire planet last year that most Westerners don't even know about. And so a lot of the people that are being the people who are doing the service, right, are disproportionate, and especially the most oppressive and grueling work in the working class are non-white people, and a lot of them are women. Also, that's also very important. They're working class non-white women is like the overarching theme, and so Emmeline had a child with this black footman. Emmeline was a wealthy feudal lady, right, with some level of power. It's very awkward conversation. There's a part where, at least I can find a picture of that guy. The Invitation, Oliver. So this guy, right, and it's a very awkward because this guy, right, is the cousin of Evie, right, and he looks, not very much like her, really, right, and he's like, well, you see, we look so different, right? We look so different because one of the wealthy, powerful British lords, British ladies had had a child with one of the black footmen, and that's why this is, and so it kind of like he's kind of like just kind of rapidly trying to gloss over that and just trying to be like, I'm so nice and charming, though. It's not like that's all in the past, I'm a very progressive, young, hip, cool. I have lots of black friends in London. He's a London real estate agent in the United States to try to acquire more properties, right? And wheeling and dealing in the, upper echelons of colonial capitalism. And he would have been a guy who is meeting with the important people at the dinner, whereas Evie is serving, right? And so actually the similarities between the so-called free democratic United States, New York City, and the London feudal reality, the similarities are also a very important thing to point out. It kind of like is another example. I would emphasize that as another example of the non-differences between Europe feudalism and Euro settler colonial capitalism in the United States. They're actually more similar than they are alike. Anyways, but I'm just reading extra things into this. So anyway, so Mr. Oliver, right, who is like, they have nothing to worry about. We're all really nice here in London, and we're all, I have a great spot in London, and we have a really nice family for you to meet. It's a huge family. We have uncles and aunts. There's like dozens and dozens of people that all would really love to meet you. Uncle Julius is speaking so highly of you. He's so happy that we have, somebody, he wants to. There's a lot of men in the family, and there's a kind of weird thing. Like, why are there so many boys in this family, and there's not a lot of women? Anyways, and he's like, Uncle Julius is so happy to meet one of the women in the family from the another continent, and blah blah blah. So it's all like, you have nothing to worry about. I'm a very nice man, but that's gaslighter, shitty, toxic dude number 101. That's like colonialism, colonialism novice settings, right? That's just basic. You just make everyone else think that you're the best thing ever, and you have nothing to worry about. All you got to do is just sign this contract and don't look at the fine print. That's what the invitation is kind of like, because obviously in vampire stories, the vampire cannot enter your abode, your house, unless you invite them in, right? That's like one of the versions of the vampire lore, right? If you don't, there's a movie, Let the Right One In. So if you don't invite the vampire into your house, they can't come in and suck your blood, kill you, enslave your family, right? And then build trillions of dollars of stolen wealth on the destruction of your entire people and culture. Well, I'm sorry, that's colonization. That's but if you don't invite them in, they can't come in and hurt you, right? It's kind of that whole thing. But similarly, so in the invitation, it's like, come, to this wedding that we're having, come to London, come to Britain itself, right? And that's one of the points of a ask is made, right? That's made to seem like it's nothing. It's a request is made, and then she can say yes or no. Because the thing is, if Evie has said no, right? If Evie had met this Mr., very friendly, British, posh, wealthy, long lost cousin, and there's a whole need for longing for family, because as I said earlier, and that's a very important point, which is that Evie's character is disconnected from her from, if she has any family, she doesn't know of them. Both her parents have already passed away and died. Her mom, I think her mom recently died. So Evie has nobody in the world. It's just her and her friend, right? And it's kind of sad, actually, but it's very, unfortunately, it's kind of very American. And so severing people from their families and from their communities is actually an important point in this, within the movie, or at least if it's not, it's important to point out. I think if Evie had more family connections, if she had a brother, an uncle, a cousin, a mom, a dad, an uncle, grandfather, people in her life that she could trust and confide in and seek help from, she might not have ever gotten into this horrible, because she almost gets killed and eaten and all, it's a vampire horror movie. It's not Twilight. You know what I'm saying? It's not. We love vampires, and 120-year-old white guys should be dating 15-year-old girls. Like that. That's that's what Twilight is very problematic, and those kinds of movies are very problematic. Western romance movies, Western movies, period, is very problematic because it normalizes trusting, and these kind of very toxic beliefs in what love is and romance is, which leads to often abusive relationships. Obviously, usually a dude abusing his girlfriend, wife, etc. And then saying, "But I'm such a nice guy, though." Or you have to because you're a woman and that's what you're supposed to do, right? So there's the Evie's friend is kind of like trying to warn her against this, right? She's like, I don't know if you should go to this Britain. I mean, this sounds you should be more cautious about this, right? And because he kind of just drops it, like when he meets his cousin, right? When she meets her cousin Oliver, he just kind of drops it on her in the middle of the conversation. They're like, well, number one, it's kind of creepy because he kind of starts off with like, so do you have a mother or father? Any family? Where? And she's all like, oh no, my parents died. And he's like, oh, that's very sad. That's very sad. But inside he's actually thinking that's great because we want to suck your blood and kill you, or we want to do terrible things. Let's put it that way, right? It's kind of already foreshadowed what's going to happen from the trailers and from the movie posters and such, right? It's like, this is nasty vampires are up to nasty vampire stuff. But the way he's asking, like, do you have any friends or family that care about you, right? Anybody who asks those kind of questions, right? You immediately gotta go. There's red flags. It should be red flags, right? Because those, especially if you are femme presenting or identifying female, etc. In the world, you're gonna be. That's one of the things that's like, because and Holly is, we were talking about it this week because we know some people in our circles that are in that position of being invited in by charming, cute, and possibly having some wealth dudes, usually white dudes, bringing in serially, right, young women and enchantable women are like, oh, he's the love of my life. Yes, he has some flaws, but I'm gonna fix him, or he's so good to me and he's better than anyone else. And then and he has this long list of, and then the dude has like multiple partners. He has gone to prison for abusing these people, and then just finds another young woman to enrapture and then bring in and then abuse and then leave beaten, etc. And all kinds of terrible things happening to that young woman who has not been through that process before, right? And then and parasitically preying upon on young naive women, and also ones who are disconnected from other people. And some women, and like some women are actually trying to warn other people, and especially women, don't go out with this guy. Don't go out with this guy. This guy is bad news. This is what happened to like 6 people in the past. This person is not trustworthy. They're gonna say all kind of charming things. They're going to enchant you. The vampire is going to enchant you. He's gonna act very dashing. He's gonna wear nice clothes. He's gonna tell you what you want to hear. Oh, I'm just misunderstood. I don't really care about this wealth. I don't really care. I'm very progressive. I'm very progressive. I love bell hooks. Cliff notes like, what do women want here? What's the feminist.com reading list? Like, I believe women should be. I just I have some problems. I've been through some things in my life, and trying to garner sympathy for all this, the hardships of being a white man. I just like but I'm just what do you want to do? Whatever you want, right? For the first day, maybe a week, whatever period of time it needs, and then eventually, right? Those other people that are saying bad things about me, all those women who have receipts of all the texts and DMs and my literal legal record, all the prison sentence that I served, all this other stuff, those people, they just out to get me. Those people are out to, you can't trust those people, right? You can't trust those people. Don't trust those people. They're trying to defame me. They're just jealous. They just can't stand. They don't like. You're different though. You're different, right? So, and that's basically what this guy does, right? The vampire, like both the cousin, right? Because the cousin, and this guy actually is her cousin, right? Is saying like, we're just regular people in Britain. We wealthy, posh, white British colonizers, we're just normal wealthy people. We're just normal people like you. I'm just, trying to do my best. I have lots of philanthropic work that I'm doing. I'm alleviating poverty in the black, and Iraqi refugees in the bad parts of East, and the West End. I'm just a very I'm a very kind-hearted, innocent white British descendant of literal colonial mega wealth. And my great grandfather had slaves, and my great grandfather's cousin was Thomas Jefferson, 600 slave having child rapist. But I'm nothing like them. It's not like I would ever gaslight women and give them date rape drugs and then try to burn all of the ends and make people sign NDAs at the large corporation that I manage. There's nothing like that would ever happen. No, I'm just a very nice, enchanting vampire. I'm sorry, white dude. And so anyways, so so it's kind of like the strategy is to, so if you're somebody who doesn't have people around that you can trust and support and can like look into things for you, or you don't understand that that's a thing that you should do, because you're young and you think you know everything. Everybody thinks they know everything when they're 13, and then sometimes when they're 18 and 20, and for a long time, those people are actually the ideal prey, right? So like the grooming, which is disproportionately white, cis, straight dudes, conservative Christians, even more so, pastors. Oh my God, number one, trying to groom 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, like this is just normal Thomas Jefferson stuff. This is normal American / Anglo stuff, because he was an Anglo-Saxon, this guy. You get, you get the 13, 12-year-olds and you groom them, and you can lock them up as sex slaves when you get them, your claws deep enough in, then you do that. So if that's why they ask questions like, do you have anyone close to you, right? They target like, people who are isolated, women that are isolated from communities, because then the probability that she will find out the truth about you, that you're actually a horrible, parasitic, abusive person, a literal vampire, or a figurative vampire, is less likely, right? So so number one, it's very, in The Last of Us episode 5, they say something like, I think it's a black woman says, a Hispanic guy says, yeah, we live up here, we share everything, we have we have shared ownership of everything, and the food and the houses and everything. And the black woman says, we're communists. And he says, oh no, it's not like that. And she's all like, well, no, we have collective ownership. We live in a commune. We're communists, right? And so and they're more protected, because of that. And they don't trust anyone. And the black woman says, don't trust. Tells Ellie, right? Never, be very, very careful about who you trust, because the only people that can really hurt you are the people that you give your trust, right? And so, and she said, you shouldn't even trust me. Don't trust me this early, right? So it's like, which is very important, which is that having community is not just important because, well, we need liberation from exploitative dystopian conditions of inability to afford basic healthcare and food and housing, and because it's also ethically and morally right for these things to not have rule by rich white billionaire creeps, right? But also you need community, which is the kind of root word of that word, right? But you need the community is important because community, and there's a lot of entities that talk about community. A lot of papers and people that talk about, they use the word community. Conservative Christian culture, right, like Holly's from, used the word, and from Holly's words, because Holly was the one who was raised and born and lived in that North American white conservative Christian culture, like the Canadian flavor, but it's in the United States and it's in Canada. And they talk about community, talk about coming together, but as Holly was saying, they don't really have any real community. It's a lot of talk. But when it comes down to it, people are isolated in their own little conservative Christian quiverful, their Bible belt, their whatever, their Dutch, weird, super creepy church. They're all in their little single family units. They're all kind of at each other's throats, trying to see who can get the most, because they're all Western capitalist people, and they're also conservative Christian, and some of them are extra far right versions of that, right? Not all of them, but but what they have in common is they talk a lot about a community, but when women are being abused, which they often are, in fact, more often than not, right? And even the brief time I've spent in Holly's parts of Canada, I'm like, yeah, this is not good. Every pastor Holly's ever been in a church of has basically been a serial abuser, who goes from church to church and embezzles and rips off the church, the congregation, and then also is abusing their wife while trying to give advice about how to have healthy marriage relationships. Literally, our marriage counselor was mistreating his own wife while telling us how to, because at the time Holly was still Christian, and our marriage counselor was trying to give us marital advice about how to have a healthy, loving relationship, right, under Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, how to have a healthy relationship in your marriage, while he himself was abusing his own wife. And this is like this, and so that's just normal. That's not normal, but that's normal, fucked up, broken Western culture. And certainly, and conservative Anglo-Euro settler culture as a subset of that. But the thing that's, the thing that unites all of that is that there's talk about community, but at the same time, community means people who actually care about other people, who actually respect, care about, work together, will actually be there for you in difficulty. And that's not the case, right? That's not the case in North America. They're there in solidarity when it comes to attacking black people, attacking the liberals that they don't even know. The liberals is just anyone that isn't in their church group, right? Attacking, if they're there to come against, to stop an abortion clinic and blow it up, okay. But when it comes to actually helping, if a woman is being cheated on, beaten, abused, the men in the community are just all, and even the women, as Holly was saying, the conservative Christian women will all say, well, she should have just had more sex with him. She should have smiled more. The men are going to all just ignore all of that because they're all abusing their wives anyway. So there is no community in the so-called moral Christian Western world, right? And that's kind of like, that's from Holly, who's like lived through it. I mean, I don't have that experience. I'm a socialized this dude, a forced Americanized Native Hawaiian in more liberal, illegally occupied Hawaii. So it's a different experience. Now, my idea of Catholic Christianized parents, but Holly has the more direct experience of that. But my point is that, like, You don't if you don't have people, right, who are there in the hard times to help pull together. Now, for indigenous communities have that. They have real community. Like Native Hawaiians, like when we're living according to our kuleana and aloha and pono, we have community, right? So communism, right? So the United States is a capitalist country, and so it's anti-community, right? At the end of the day, it's anti-community. It moves its mouth. It talks about democracy, not just community, human rights and democracy and freedom. There is none. It's a plutocratic. 99% of all legislation is determined by 1% of people, and that's why Norfolk Southern is turning Ohio into a toxic waste dump. It doesn't care about the democracy. It doesn't care about the community, right? Norfolk Southern is a parasitic, multi-billion-dollar, billionaire-run corporate entity that is vampirically sucking whatever dollars it can out of the now withered husk that used to be Ohio, and which used to be the sovereign, indigenous, community-filled territory of Native Americans. So coming back to this point though, when you have people that care and trust and have each other's backs, they can help, right, stop abusive parasitic entities from luring other people, right, from you being lured into a toxic parasitic relationship, right? Like, as I said, right, as Holly was talking about, in the conservative Christian communities, there isn't any, because when children are being abused, when women are being abused, when people are in hard times, all the other people all smiling and looking pretty and pleasant with all their crosses, with their hands folded and praying, will immediately turn and kick the other family or ignore it when the abuse happens, when someone is being neglected, when there's real poverty. They'll do a little, here, have a bundt cake. Here's a bundt cake. There you go. That's it. But when it comes to when Holly's like, when it comes to the banquets and the potlucks, when it's actual communal things, nobody brings anything. The white people, nobody brings anything or barely anything, and then they immediately eat everyone else's stuff as fast as possible. It's like, if you got a real community, you actually give, and you don't just give because you could get something back out of it, like some kind of, you don't give a token, school like Elon Musk, right, giving a token hospital, or Bill Gates giving a token hospital while taking multi-trillion dollars worth of wealth out of Africa with all of his co-investments that he has along with that, right? So there's no such thing as community in a capitalist country culture, in a colonialist country or culture. There is only people along a isolated, atomized hierarchy that are trying to vie their way towards the top. That's a theme I used to go off on a lot. Even within marriages, it's a confrontational marriage, right? I'm constantly trying to flip and get a more prestigious trophy wife at all times as a man, if you're a man inside of such a culture. Every conservative is constantly cheating on their wife all the time. It's just, that's why they always talk about the LGBTQ plus community are the groomers, because this projection, they're the ones sexually abusing, committing pedophilia, beating their wives, cheating on their wives. They abuse children and women all the time. So they assume that, they project that, the gay community is just trying to, a drag queen show, right? Or drag queen event, like a book reading, is simply a gay, person trying to parasitically prey on my children in the Tennessee library. By the way, all drag shows, all queer shows are apparently now illegal in multiple states. Tennessee is one of them. This is happening very fast. So, but that's the projection of cis hetero Western patriarchal culture, which is fundamentally vampiric, right? It's fundamentally vampiric. It's fundamentally at all levels, from the economically, male to female, gender wise, parent to child wise, in all racially, exploited, Hispanic, exploited $3 an hour on McCall Ice, brown labor, staffs all the restaurants, and harvests all of the Coke farms food, right? It's the labor that's currently, doing the majority in the global South. It's even worse, right? So all those relationships are fundamentally vampiric and exploitative. And so community. So when you have people that you can confirm with, right? Like if Evie had listened to her friend, right, then maybe she wouldn't have been coming back. She wouldn't have been in this trouble, right? And so the when you're out of community is when you are most ripe for the taking from the perspective of patriarchy, capitalism, vampires, right? Abusive, toxic dudes, right? So part of the point is kind of like, like I went off this a lot with a lot of the She-Hulk streams, but one of the things is just never date anyone who identifies as a man, unfortunately, in the United States and in the Western world. Anyone who identifies as a man should immediately be suspect. They should immediately be like background checked and probably not even dated. Like I said, if for some reason I become a terrible person or I'm just not around for whatever reason or something happens, I said, Holly, never date a man. Never date a man because these people are they're surrounded with toxic, horrible culture. What the meaning of the word men is, it basically means right-wing abusive, Jordan Petersonian, Joe Rogan. It means Tucker Carlson culture. That's what to be a man means, to have the gender of Jordan Peter / Tucker Carlson. That's what it means. To be a man means to be Ron DeSantis. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. That's like the average meaning. Now there are people that like trying to like reclaim that, but it's like I cannot recommend it. I'll be like it's very dangerous because of there's a lot of factors, but part of it is because men have been accustomed to getting their way under patriarchy, right? Certainly since in the place like the United States, certainly like 1950s on the Stepford times. Sorry, this is the Daredevil stream. But that's also like how to be less crappy. But it's since the 1950s, men have been getting their way in places like the United States, pretending like everything's hunky-dory. The women were never happy about this. It's very important for people to remember. Women were never happy about that entire 50s Stepford wife situation. I recently did one. Where is that one I just did? Yeah, Don't Worry, Darling, right? That one's all about that. Patriarchy and the Pax Americana. So as the patriarchy or male domination, right, male inequality between genders, right, starts to fall apart, men are becoming more and more and more upset, right? 64, I forget the statistics, like 64% of men cannot get a date with a woman, and in the dating apps, they're like disproportionately the people that are on the market, and they're unable to find anything because women don't want to even date and go on those dating apps. So but and it's unfortunate because, as I brought up in the other stream, like that's too bad that's what's happening. But what we want to have, the world that we want to have and the world that we live in are two different things, right? The world that we live in is a world where men are fighting. It's the same way that like, as people of color are starting to establish more equality for ourselves relative to white people. Economically, still it's a difficult struggle, but there are more empowered. There are more people. There are more black people becoming president. Not that that's actually a great improvement, but I mean it is structurally. I mean it at least visually, perceptually, it is altering the minds of a lot of people in the United States, and it's not really a long-term win for to end racist capitalism, but the voice of people of color is more present, right? Internationally, the power of non-white people is increasing, and so that fear, right, and the fear that white power might be falling in the United States is the backlash. A lot of that is the Donald Trump, the January 6th rioters, right? The January 6th coup of the United States that was quickly undone, but it was really a soft coup. Donald Trump civil warred the country in the June of that year. The U.S. basically duct tape over its fractured, balkanizing country, where half the military leaders of the United States almost initiated a civil war, except the other half said we can't do that because it would be bad for imperialism if we start to fracture into pieces. So, I mean, anyway. So long story short, as people who have been historically oppressed gain power, black people as one. The historical oppressors, the white population, is now, and we were just reading Pedagogy of the Oppressed earlier with Professor Flowers. The oppressors often hidden, invisibilized, masked violence, right? That's kind of shadow in the shadows. It's quiet when there's no troublemakers, right? But when it looks like the oppressed are starting to rise up visually and visibly in the streets, then the oppressors go, well, we cannot allow this to stand, and then you get the Trump era, right? That's a lot of that. Some people say, oh, it's because of the white economic oppression, and that's part of it. But the January 6 rioters, what united them all? They're of all different white class backgrounds, middle class, upper class, all over the country, but they were all white, and they were all for a white America. They wanted a white America, like it always was in their mind, and they are not incorrect. As I said, Marjorie Taylor Greene, this country the United States is a capitalist country. It is not a communist country. It is an anti-socialist country, and the United States is a white country. It is not to use the words woke. Whenever somebody says the word woke, what they mean is get black people back in chains. Get brown people and women also back in chains. We don't want wokeness. Just means the truth and equality. And so if you're anti-woke, you are pro-white supremacy, pro-patriarchy, and you're pro-America, because that's what America is. It's a white, patriarchal, dying shithole. So the people, and people should just be honest about this, and then you can figure out what side you're on. Right? So in Don't Worry, Darling, right? The patriarchy is being challenged, and so the Jordan Peterson, and actually the main character was based on Jordan Peterson himself, right? As I brought up in that video. So as the women are gaining power, right? That's the whole thing with Megan Thee Stallion coming online, with all the women are disproportionate with social media and the ability to get in contact with other women and people all around the world, people within the country. People who were formerly more isolated because they didn't have anyone else to talk to, because they're in their little conservative Christian or liberal, neoliberal hellhole, atomized household apartment, or in their husbands' locked chambers, because husbands in the conservative world keep a leash on their wives a lot of times by holding by financially abusing and saying, you can never go anywhere in public without me. You have to be on my side at all times. You never talk to anyone except for the people I allow you to talk to. You never talk to any man. You talk to a very limited number of women, right? And so when you have social media and the internet as part of this, right, all of a sudden you're a conservative Christian woman, and then you can be in contact with all these other people going, girl, you are in an abusive situation, right? Because you never would have known that when you were an isolated individual, right? Isolated from everyone else, with no loving family. I mean, if you're a Westerner, you probably don't have a loving family to start with. Everyone is an atomized, self-serving YOLO, abusing children, abusing wives. You have trophy wives, trophy children, right? And everyone is just a ladder. So nobody cares about anyone in the Western culture. Period. I would argue. And so when you find other people in the world, not even your own parents and family, because a lot of times the average parents and family, if you were like, Mom, this boy I'm dating, he tells me I have to change my hair and change my body, and sometimes he's like he says terrible things to me sometimes, but he does have a reasonably okay job, and the mom would be like, oh, just put up with it. Dad would be like, oh yeah, boys will be boys, right? So your parents aren't a community in Western patriarchal capitalist culture. They're not. Your parents are not part of your community. Your parents are enabling your abusers, because they're part of an abuse. They don't even know it, but they're part of an abusive, toxic culture. And but when young women are all finding, and or young and 20, 30-year-old women in millennials and Gen Z are finding each other, and they're going, hey, are you guys experiencing this fucked up toxic abuse from all these shitty, nasty dudes? Hey, are you also being exploited at your workforce? Hey, do you feel like all these things do you feel like all these things, ableism and racism, sexism, all these things, I feel like these are all a problem. Oh yeah, here's a book. Here's, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Here's Hanani K. Trask, From a Native Daughter. Here's the indigenous history. Here's world history. Did you know that most of the world is not completely fucked up and run by a handful of people parasitically exploiting the other 90% of the population based on race, class, and economic wealth aggregation divides. Did you know that that's right? And then all the young people who suddenly have this community, whether that's offline or online, and probably both, telling each other, "Hey, we should get together and empower each other and not put up with toxic, shitty, fucking deadbeat boyfriends who just want to play video games, have sex, and then cheat on us, and then also use we have the job, the young women have the job, paying for all of abusive, shitty boyfriends' stuff and his pizza and his Call of Duty and his whatever the fuck he's gonna get. Why should we?" And then, and that's like that's all like the the people that the empowered women that are like watching She-Hulk and going, "Yeah, I'm gonna be like that," or like Megan Thee Stallion is very important because she's a woman who doesn't have a or doesn't have a man managing her. She's like her own person. Like, why can't we, and so the difference is when you have community empowerment and then also some economic empowerment, right? Because actually the men are disproportionately not getting hired for a lot of jobs. I should say, there men that do get hired still at a higher wage, but they have the level of jobs that a lot of them are getting nowadays is not the same, partially because they're not working as hard. They feel entitled to a level of good paying job in a fancy office that their father had that they're not necessarily getting. And part of that is not because the men who run huge corporations are trying to equalize things, but they just care about themselves more than other young men, right? But one way to put it is boomer and Gen X capitalist men who own are CEOs and high level management of Microsofts and Amazons and all the companies. They don't give a shit about. They give a shit about themselves. They give less of a shit about male solidarity, than they do about keeping all the money that they have and letting the world burn, right? And so that's part of it. But anyway, but the point is that the reaction to that though is, well, I that's why people turn to Jordan Peterson. I deserve, right? Feminism is the problem because if women would just get out of the workforce and I could get back to being a mediocre cis white guy doing nothing but grabbing ass in the office, like the people grab ass in the restaurants, right? And then having women and people of color do all my work for me, right? And I be the manager, the executive, the assistant manager who just talks about golf and drinks my highballs and just chills out, plays video games. Why can't I just play video games in the office, right? Just play Call of Duty and play BioShock in the office, right? Talk to other gamer dudes and then make $300,000 a year while all the women and black people do all the work in the office, right? Why can't I be like my dad except with video games instead of talking about football games, right? And then men are getting upset and then they're joining Jordan Peterson Club Joe Rogan, right? Club DeSantis, right? Club Tucker Carlson, Club Patriot Socialism, or all these bullshit things. But basically it's about reestablishing that power dynamic. But part of the reason why that's happened, the reason why there's a reaction is because there is community being built. Now, at a larger macro scale, capitalism is dying. It's getting worse and worse, and inequality is growing and growing, right? But as the inequality is economically is growing and growing, right? From the CEOs to the bottom rung worker levels, the women and the people of color and indigenous people are all figuring out we have to get into our communities and protect each other, right? And try to stop these parasitic entities from taking advantage of us, right? And the men are increasingly, they're not really getting a community. They're getting into fascism with each other, right? They're getting into Reddit and 4chan, and they're getting into men's rights activists, Elon standing non-community, right? Being really toxic with each other, yelling at each other like, you're just an ugly, something. You're not getting a date because you're too fat and you're too ugly, and you're not a 10 Uber Chad, and that's all the world is Uber Chads, and you're garbage, right? So it's about, right? So right patriarchal split, right? The right/white/patriarchal split versus the left and the black, indigenous, brown, and women is one is moving towards community and people trying to help each other, caring about each other, right? Caring about LGBTQ plus people, caring about trans people, right? Trying to support people who are marginalized in different ways, people who have always been taken advantage of by vampires, right? In different ways, trying to help, right? Actually have each other's backs, right? People having $10 left to their name and they give $5 to a GoFundMe, right? To raise some money for a trans person to get housing or healthcare or escape an abusive situation, right? It's the people who, right? It's the same people who like don't have that much and they already are marginalized in some way that are coming together. And then you have the other people, right? Men. I mean, even not some of them are non-white men too, but it's usually men. The men are going, what the fuck is wrong with this? Fuck this, man. Fuck this. We're gonna just smash all these goddamn SJWs and the blacks. Or if you're in a black group, you're like, well, we got all of these, we got all this, these women don't want to have sex with me. What the hell, man? Frick, I gotta have sex. What's wrong with these? And then there's people who are selling out their own people. There's the Obamas and the Kamalas, right? But and the Tulsis, right, selling out women, selling out brown people, going, we just have to stop. If we just stop this one war, now I'm not saying that the war in Ukraine it's peace needs to happen, but they're going like the right. There was a huge rally that involved very racist, very right-wing elements that are like not there, don't care about black people, and they very thinly veil it. And they're having an anti-war on a peace rally in D.C. But it was split, and the Jacqueline Luqman and Black Power Media were kind of like in that, not in the crossfire, they were like indirectly being attacked by anti-imperialist white supremacists, right? Which is like, empire's bad. We should not want that. But also white supremacy is not good. And disproportionately, all those people on the other side were men. There's Tulsi Gabbard, and then a ton of men, mostly white men. Right, like January 6th, all basically white people, right, and disproportionately men also, right. And there's men, and then there's the trad wives, and then there's the people who are willing to throw their own people under the bus, like Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris, right, and Obama, and the one black pastor that's gonna show up for all the black murders and make it okay for $1 million, and the one Hawaiian guy who's gonna take $500,000 to put the Hawaiian blessing on. Yes, it's okay to build a military base here or build another giant capitalist hotel here. You got a handful of those guys, right? And then you got all the white men, and then a bunch of men, and all the conservative Christian women who are willing to throw other women on. When women get abused in their community, they just tell the other women, "Oh, just tolerate it because Jesus loves us." By what I mean by that is, we're going to have lots of nice things, and or we're deeply gaslit by the men, and we're brainwashed to believe that women deserve to suffer and be beaten. So that's one half. That's one side. That's the whole side right there. But it's very gendered. The gender is a major split. And I'll argue that one of the reasons why the gender is a major split between the vampiric, the fascists ultimately, and the people who are resisting the parasitic exploitation and abuse. So anyways, don't forget everything that we do here, as I said, is supported by the sales of games like Neofeud. It is not supported by the sales of Peter from What We Do in the Shadows. But yeah, Neofeud is a game that does support everything that we do here. It's not on sale right now, but consider checking out and picking it up. It is also available on itch.io. So if you don't like getting games on Steam, consider checking it out on itch.io. It's also a game that is also on sale there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So you can still get it on sale on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It's also a game that is can give us the maximum revenue when you pick it up there. Don't forget to check out Decolonators, Indigenous Star, Pigeon with Gun, and Woman. I mean, speaking about women, Holly, as I said, was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and is not wrote this book that is not necessarily a historical retelling, but a fictional work about Mary from the Bible, from her perspective, and it is a critique of this conservative Christian patriarchal culture from someone who has mercifully escaped that crucifix-filled vampire castle. But anyways, Holly has also you can support us by throwing some money this way when you pick it up, or you can pick it up for free, up to you. You can also become, as I said, a Patreon supporter. If you appreciate the education and entertainment or edutainment that we do here, consider becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud, or also becoming a supporter. You can support us through Ko-Fi as well for one-time donations. Any amount really does help go a long way to keep us doing the work that we're doing. Also, you get access to the Silver Spook Discord, Silver Spook Behind the Scenes, and Silver Spook University, which is just a large collection organized roughly according to topic areas of all the content I've ever put out. You get all that when you become a Patreon at any level, so consider supporting us in that way. Also, remember at Silver Spook Games at Octodon.social, you can follow and at Silver Spook Games at Mastodon.social, on Twitter at Silver Spook Guy or at Silver Spook Games for the game stuff. You can also follow Terminus Cyberstar. We also have a Facebook and Instagram as well, and you can follow Terminus Cyberstar at Terminus C. We have all of the latest updates on Terminus Cyberstar, which is a Deus Ex System Shock cyberpunk RPG sort of game that is made by a handful of folks, and I am the content director and lead writer of this game. So yeah, so consider following if you like those sorts of games, and you can join the Discord. And of course, Holly, you can follow Holly at the Tech Fairy. Holly can be followed. Holly is a writer, poet, educator, mod for Silver Spook here, and producer, writer, and manager for KNX TV, also known as The Lounge, a chaotic cabaret for the chronically online. And so yeah, so consider checking that out. Holly also parent, caregiver, and also tweets important things like this at the Silver Spook Cooperative. So yeah, that's important for people to know as well. Yes. Wait, what? That's not Terminus C. That's weird. That was very strange. Oh, I did say at Terminus C under Holly. Anyways, thank you to all the people. There you go. Thank you to, that must have been a weird glitch on Twitter. Well, you know, everything's breaking. Part of living in the vampire castle, you have an old decrepit gothic necropolis, and as it falls apart, both in real life in its trains as well as online in its social media corporations being destroyed by people like Elon, things are going to break. So anyways, thanks to all these people for your continued support. Really does help us out a lot, and it keeps us going. So thanks for your continued Patreon patronage, all of you people. And yeah, so now we will be back later on in the evening for talking about whatever kind of fun stuff pops into our heads. Yeah, we'll be doing some more chill stuff this evening on the Twitch stream at 8 p.m. Pacific time. All right, have a good one.